Hello everyone. In this video, and over the course of several other videos, we are going to do a brief refresher of what we should have learned in basic database and database concepts, starting out with entity relationships for what we'll soon make an ERD. Entities are any noun that we use to represent a real-world object, such as a pet, a car, a student. And anything used to describe these entities is an attribute. We want to make sure that our attributes are atomic or broken down into fine-grained parts so that we can suss out any entities that we make. You'll notice that I am in Lucidchart, and if you need any example onto getting and signing up for Lucidchart, please look at the syllabus that I've written out. But in order to make an ERD and an entity, we first need to go to Shapes here in the bottom left. We'll click Shapes and we will go to ERD for Entity Relationship, and we will give this guy a click, and we will use the selected shapes. Once we've added these selected shapes, we can see that we have several different templates for entities, but for this implementation we are simply going to use this one entity right here. We then take this guy and drag and drop him and place him right here. So once we put this entity here, you'll notice that we have a entity name that is already pre-provided for us, as well as several fields, which are also called attributes. In this case, I will use these interchangeably throughout the entire course, so don't be confused by it. So in this instance, let's go ahead and say we are going to create a student entity. And a student can have a, let's just say, a name. They can have a E number. Instead of E number, let's go ahead and say address. And they can have a, let's just say age. Now, when we have this set up, we want to make sure that our student and its entity's entirety is atomic. Now, what do I mean by atomic? Atomic in that we should be able to say that all attributes or fields for this entity are broken down into their fine-grained parts. So when we talk about a name consists of multiple things, right? So we want to be sure that our name is broken down into the smallest components that it can handle. So we have a first name for a student. Let's go ahead and add a field below. Let's go ahead and put a last name. Let's add another attribute below, and we have a suffix such as junior or senior or the third. We can also have multiple addresses for this entity. So in this case, let's go ahead and change this to address line 1 and address line 2. Fix my spelling there real quick. And let's just leave age as it is. So when we actually have this guy right here, our entries for a single instance for a student are going to look something like this. We'll have, let's say, Dave with a last name of Jones, a suffix such as junior. His address line could be 123 Oak Avenue. Johnson City, Tennessee, with a zip code of, let's go ahead and say this is all one line here. Johnson City, Tennessee, 37601. And he has an age of, let's say, 25. So that's all well and good. But if I want to look up specifically for this person or this entry for a student entity, I would have to say, look at all the attributes in order to know that I'm getting that specific person. What happens if I have another Dave Jones, but instead of Dave Jones Jr., I have Dave Jones Sr., who lives at 122 Oak Avenue, Johnson City, Tennessee, and he's also 25. Well, we would have to sit down and suss out which Dave Jones we're talking about. And of course, we could say, oh, this is based on his address of where he is, or this is based on the suffix that we have here. But let's make life easy for ourselves, and we can do this by having a primary key that can be used for our identifier. Now, in this case, we could have a artificial student, just a student value or a student number that we attach or associate to these guys. But we could also use a E number, such as the one that we give you guys at school. This E number we can then update this guy. It would look something like, I don't know, E30202. And then we also have this guy right here, where now our Dave Sr. has his own E number with 30203. I hope this has been a bit of a refresher for entities and how they should be broken down atomically. In the next video, I will be discussing relationships and other aspects of ERDs.